Welcome back. Earlier this week, the Nigerian government confirmed that the country's average daily crude oil production is now 1.7 million barrels per day. And according to the chief executive officer of the NUPRC, Gbenga Komolafe, the rise in crude oil output is driven by reactivation of dormant fields, faster regulatory approvals, efficiency across the upstream sector, and the actions taken by its security agencies. It says the next goal is now to work towards achieving a production of 2.5 million barrels per day. So tonight, Babajide Ogunsanwo, who's the founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's chief data analyst, is here to look beyond these headlines and share more insight about Nigeria's crude oil production facts. Thank you very much, Babajide Ogunsanwo, for joining us on the news at 10.
Good evening.
First, how much is crude oil in Nigeria? I mean, how much is crude oil, how much of it is Nigeria producing at the moment? And is there any alternative fact when we look at the figures from the government?
There are two ways to look at this. We have the facts from OPEC last year's facts, and we have the facts that you just mentioned from the NUPRC, who is responsible for measuring crude oil production. And if we go by what OPEC said last year, Nigeria, as of 2024, OPEC's real data shows that we produced an average of 1.35 million barrels per day. Now we're at 1.7 million barrels per day. And this is we've just barely gone into the third quarter. That's about a 26% increase from last year. And so that is a lot of good news, and that is very impressive. And after this sort of performance, we've seen the statement, and if we take a look at the statement made by the Chief Executive Officer of the NUPRC about how this was possible, his position is Nigeria's oil and gas potential has often been underestimated. Under the bold decisions of President Tinubu, new horizons are opening. With the NUPRC's dynamic leadership, we are charting higher ground, making Nigeria not only a hub for profit, but also a beacon for sustainable energy investment. And so the Chief Executive Officer has, in his own words, explained how we've been able to grow our crude oil production volumes from 1.35 million barrels last year to what it is today, 1.7 million barrels. Good news. But beyond the good news, Anne, there is some bad news. And if we take a look at our crude oil production volumes since the beginning of the Fourth Republic, if we look at how the chart has gone since 1999, the bad news is, yes, we've made giant strides compared to last year when we were at 1.35 million barrels. But the fact shows that a quarter of a century ago, when we came into the Fourth Republic, 1999, Nigeria was producing 1.7 million barrels per day. So in simple terms, we are back to where we were in 1999. So yes, we are at 1.7, better than what it was last year. Very impressive, good news. But compared to how we were and the position as at 1999, it's really bad news. 1.7 million barrels, 1999, 2.5 decades after, we're still at 1.7 million barrels. Bad news, Anne.
But it's now over 100 days since the group chief officer of the NNPC Limited, Bayo Julari, was appointed. Are there any financial reports to measure the situation at the NNPC? Any significant difference yet? And what should the NNPC do to sustain this upward trend in crude oil production? As you've said, there's more of good news than bad news.
Yeah, so we're waiting for the NNPC's interim media report. That is not yet out, but overall what we've seen is based on the sort of boardroom politics going on at the NNPC, especially at the leadership level. Overall media sentiment is more negative than it is positive. We've seen a lot more boardroom politics and power play going on within the NNPC than real actual work and synergy among the different units. And really there's a storm brewing beyond the boardroom politics in NNPC. The real issue, Anne, is going by the available statistics, in the last 5 years, yes, $38 billion of capital came into, foreign capital came into Nigeria. However, only 9% of this was foreign direct investment. And so we can see there's real danger ahead. Money is coming in, but short-term funds. And this is the same thing in the oil and gas sector. If we take a look at what exactly has happened within Nigeria's oil and gas sector in recent history, we clearly understand why the NNPC has to go beyond boardroom politics and focus on what is in front of us. 2016, foreign investment in Nigeria's oil and gas sector, $720 million. How much foreign investment came into the Nigeria's oil and gas sector last year? Only $5 million. Just think about that for a minute. We've moved from $720 million in 2016 to only $5 million. And so the challenge is we clearly have to have and rethink our investment strategy and how to attract long-term capital into the oil and gas sector. And that should be the focus of the Ojulari-led NNPC, instead of all the media fights we currently seeing, and clearly a lot of uncoordinated things going on.
Yeah, we've seen the target by the CEO of NUPRC saying that the production target is 2.5 million, coming from 1.7 million. How feasible do you think this is, quickly before we wrap up?
So there are two ways to look at this. We moved from 1.35 to 1.7, that's about 26%. If we want to move from 1.7 to 2.5, that's about 46%. So, you know, years ago, before my father, before he passed, he gave me a book by Clement Stone, W. Clement Stone. I said, if you aim for the moon, even if you miss, you might hit the star. And so I think what the NUPRC is trying to do is aim for the moon and clearly see what will happen. But clearly, there's some improvement based on the report from OPEC, especially looking at our oil rig count. And if we quickly take a look at why we perhaps should end with the good news, looking at our oil rig count, we see that security agencies have created some stability. Nigeria's oil rig count, based on OPEC's report, shows that as of last year, 31, look at where we were coming from, 23, 2021, 27 in 2022, and 28 in 2023. So positive news from our oil rig count because there's a lot more stability. And again, the Chief of Defense Staff, who is heading a lot of the operations going on, has also made a statement based on what he feels will be the future, especially when it comes to crude oil production. And in his own words, he said, production is growing, yet our mission is greater. Every pipeline must flow with oil, and every corner of our land must flow with wealth. True security is not only freedom from fear, it is the power of financial safety for every Nigerian. So, Anne, it all depends on which perspective you want to look at it. There's some good news, and there's really some news to worry about. Thank
you very much. Babajide Ogunsanwo, founder of Leadership by Data and, of course, Channels Television's Chief Data Analyst. Thanks for your analysis on the news at 10 tonight.
The pleasure is all mine.